Hey everyone, how's your day going? Whether it's been good or rough, you're not alone. So sit back, relax, and let's step into the world of mystery together. I've always liked playing games, but I never imagined one could turn into a nightmare. It all started with Caleb. He had been my friend for years, but lately, something had changed. He was obsessed with Squid Game. He didn't just enjoy the show, he lived it. Every conversation revolved around strategies, rules, and theories. At first, it was amusing, but over time, his obsession became unsettling. He stopped talking about anything else, and his social media was flooded with posts about survival tactics and real-life adaptations. He even started collecting gear, not just merchandise, but actual uniforms, replica airsoft guns, even a guard mask. He looked ridiculous wearing it, but none of us dared to tell him. Then, one night, everything changed. It was a Saturday, and as usual, we were drinking at Mason's house. Me, Caleb, Mason, Laura, and Jason. Caleb arrived late, looking different. His usual goofy grin was gone. Instead, his face was tense. His eyes darker than I'd ever seen them. He didn't sit, he just stood there, staring at us. "I'm disappointed in all of you," he said. We exchanged confused glances. "What are you talking about?" Laura asked. "You never supported me. You all laughed. But tonight I'll show you. I'm giving you a chance." Jason scoffed. "Dude, chill. It's just a show." Caleb's jaw clenched. "It's more than a show." Then he smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile that made my stomach turn. "Let's play a game." We were drunk, reckless, and stupid. So when Caleb invited us to his house, we didn't think twice. We got in our cars and followed him. His house was eerily quiet when we arrived. He led us through the dimly lit hallway, down a staircase we had never noticed before. The basement was different, walls covered in Squid Game posters, a table lined with weapons. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a joke. Then Caleb grabbed a rifle. We froze. The room's silence was deafening. Caleb's grip on the rifle was tight. His fingers relaxed near the trigger. "We're going to play red light, green light." Laura took a slow step forward. "Caleb, this isn't funny. Put the gun down." His expression twisted into something darker. He cocked the rifle. "Red light." Mason was the first to move. "Screw this. I'm leaving." The gunshot shattered the silence. Mason collapsed, a dark stain spreading across his shirt. Laura screamed and rushed to him, pressing her hands against the wound. His body trembled, blood pooling beneath him. Green light. We stood paralyzed. Mason's gasping breaths filled the air before they stopped altogether. Caleb grinned, tilting his head. "See? Just follow the rules." Jason and I exchanged glances. There was no way out. Our only choice was to play along. "Move," Caleb commanded. My legs felt like lead, but I stepped forward. Jason followed, his breathing ragged. We inched forward, stopping when Caleb called, "Red light." Every muscle in my body ached from tension. The basement suddenly felt infinite, the exit impossibly far away. Then Jason panicked. Without warning, he bolted toward the stairs. A deafening gunshot. Jason's body hit the floor, his mouth open in a silent scream. His eyes were still open, staring at me. My stomach churned. "Don't look. Don't move." Caleb turned to me, that unsettling smile still on his face. "You're good at this," he murmured. "I always liked you, you know?" My skin crawled. His grip on the rifle loosened for just a second. He turned slightly, humming under his breath. This was my chance. I ran. His voice followed me. "Red light." I didn't stop. The gun fired. A searing pain tore through my arm, but I kept moving, crashing into the basement door. The handle wouldn't budge, locked. I rammed my shoulder against it, desperate. Behind me, Caleb was laughing, raising the rifle. One more second and I'd be dead. A final gunshot rang out, but not at me. I turned in time to see Caleb standing in the middle of the room, the rifle pressed beneath his chin. His expression was eerily calm. His lips moved one last time. Green light. The shot echoed through the house. Blood splattered against the posters. His body crumpled onto the floor, a sickening finality in the way he fell. I don't remember how I got out. Maybe I broke a window, maybe the door was never really locked. All I remember is the cold air burning my lungs as I ran through the streets, screaming for help. The police found the bodies, the weapons, the months of planning. Caleb had turned his basement into his own twisted version of Squid Game, and we had walked straight into it. I was the only one who survived. The nightmares won't stop. I close my eyes and still hear his voice. Red light, green light, and the gunshots. Always the gunshots. I don't know if I'll ever sleep again. I've always been a fan of challenge videos on YouTube, especially ones where contestants compete for big prizes. When I received an email claiming I had been chosen for an exclusive real-life Squid Game event hosted by one of the biggest YouTubers in the world, I didn't even think twice. The email had the logo, a personalized invitation, and even a link to a private video where Chris Lewis, the YouTuber in question, explained that this was going to be his biggest project yet. The best part? It was completely safe. No real violence, just an elaborate game with a massive cash prize for the winner. The location was only revealed after I confirmed my participation. The instructions led me to a private airstrip outside of Denver, where a small group of other contestants was already waiting. Some of them were filming themselves, excitedly talking about how this could be their big break. A private bus arrived and took us deep into the countryside. I should have known something was off. There were no camera crews, no bright, colorful sets, just a massive fenced-off property, shrouded in darkness. When the bus stopped, a man in a deep blue jumpsuit and a mask resembling Chris Lewis stepped forward. His voice was distorted through a speaker. "Welcome to the game. Let's have some fun." Something felt wrong. Chris Lewis was known for his over-the-top personality and loud, energetic challenges. But here, everything was silent. No cameras, no drones, no crew. Just masked men standing in the distance, their stillness unnatural. One of the contestants, a guy named Logan, raised his hand. "Hey, where's the real Chris?" The masked man didn't answer. Instead, he clapped his hands, and the men behind him stepped forward. First game, hide and seek. You hide, we seek. Each of us was given a small wrist timer, counting down from 10 minutes. Some people scattered immediately. Others hesitated, like me. I kept looking around for a camera crew, expecting Chris to pop out at any moment, laughing about how this was all an elaborate prank. But no one came. The buzzer sounded. The countdown had begun. I ran. The field stretched far and wide, with only a few scattered trees for cover. My heart pounded as the timer ticked down. 8 minutes. 7. 6. I found a dip in the ground and dropped low, covering myself with dry grass. My breath came in short, uneven bursts as I listened. Then I heard the first gunshot. A scream followed. My stomach twisted. I peeked out from my hiding spot. In the distance, a contestant lay in the grass, his body twitching violently before going still. A man in a jumpsuit stood over him, tilting his head slightly, as if admiring his work. Then he raised the rifle again. Another shot, another scream. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a game. Panic spread fast. People started running blindly toward the fence. The moment they touched it, their bodies convulsed violently, mouths opening in silent screams as electricity surged through them. The stench of burning flesh filled the air. The fence was electrified. I clenched my teeth, keeping as still as possible. The timer on my wrist hit 0. A loud buzzer sounded. Game over. The men stopped firing. Some of them began dragging the bodies away, their hands gripping the corpses like sacks of meat. Others rounded up the survivors, their masked faces betraying no emotion. I stayed frozen in place, my heart slamming against my ribs. One of the masked men walked toward my hiding spot. My breath caught in my throat. He stepped closer, his boots crunching through the blood-soaked grass. His finger hovered over the trigger. Then he turned away. I didn't move until I heard them marching off. Then a whistle rang out. "The next game will begin soon." I stayed hidden as the remaining contestants were herded into a large warehouse. The doors slammed shut. The lights went out. Then the screaming began. I don't know what they were doing in there, but it was worse than the gunfire. People begged, pleaded, sobbed. Then a low, guttural noise. Not human, not natural. A shriek, then silence. I had to get out. I crawled through the trees, every nerve in my body screaming at me to move faster. That's when I saw her. A woman crouched behind a bush, her leg covered in deep gashes. Her breathing was shallow, her hands clamped over her mouth to keep from making noise. "We have to move," I whispered. "There's no way out," she said, her voice hollow. Her pupils were blown wide with terror. "We'll find one." We crawled through the darkness, avoiding the patrolling guards. The warehouse doors opened again, and they dragged something out. Not a body, something moving, something twitching. I clenched my jaw. I wasn't going to die here. We waited until the guards left, then sprinted toward the far end of the property. That's when we saw it. Another fence, smaller, less guarded. I picked up a rock and threw it at the metal. No sparks. It wasn't electrified. "I'll help you climb," she groaned as she pulled herself over. My turn. I gripped the top of the fence when a spotlight hit me. A guard shouted. I jumped. A gunshot rang out. Pain seared through my shoulder, hot and wet, but I kept running. Others saw us escaping. More followed. Gunfire erupted. People dropped. Some didn't even make it to the fence before their bodies hit the ground, crumpling like broken dolls. The woman and I made it to the road. A truck approached. We waved desperately. It stopped. "We need help. Please, please let us in." The driver hesitated but finally unlocked the door. As we sped away, I turned back. The masked men weren't chasing us. They just stood there, watching. They weren't worried. We went straight to the police, told them everything. They took our statements and promised to investigate. Days passed. Nothing happened. No news. No headlines. No missing person reports. It was like it never happened. Then an email arrived. A link. I clicked it. It was a video of the games. Except it was edited like a Chris Lewis YouTube video. Sound effects, dramatic music, exaggerated reactions. But one thing was different. At the end, the masked man removed his disguise. It wasn't Chris Lewis. It was a stranger. A voice spoke over the video. "Thank you for playing." The viewers on our little site on the dark web loved it. The video ended. My hands trembled. I checked the URL. It wasn't YouTube. It was a private site. We weren't part of a Chris Lewis challenge. We were part of something else. Something dark. And people had been watching the whole time. Ryan stared at his phone, fingers hesitating over the keyboard. He had typed and deleted the message at least 3 times, unsure if he was overreacting. Finally, he hit send. "Ryan, dude, you won't believe what Jake's been up to lately. It's getting weird." Mason replied almost instantly. "Mason, weird how?" "Ryan, he's obsessed with Squid Game. Like really obsessed. It's all he talks about now." "Mason, I mean everyone was obsessed when it came out. No big deal." "Ryan, no, this is different. He rewatched it so many times he's memorized every detail. He's even trying to recreate the games." "Mason, what, like the cookie game? That's kind of funny, actually." "Ryan, it's not funny. He built an entire setup in his basement. He invited me over yesterday, said he wanted me to practice. He was serious." "Mason, what the hell does that mean?" "Ryan, he said, one day we'll have to play for real." Mason felt a chill run down his spine. A week later, Mason's phone buzzed in the middle of the night. It was Ryan. "Ryan, Mason, I'm at Jake's house. You need to come over. Now." Mason, "What? Why? What's going on?" "Ryan, just get here. And don't come alone." Mason didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys and drove to Jake's place. The house was eerily quiet when he arrived, the windows dark except for a faint glow from the basement. Ryan met him at the door, looking pale and shaken. "Dude," Ryan whispered, pulling Mason inside. You were right to be worried. Mason stepped into the living room and immediately noticed something was off. The entire space was bathed in dim, red lighting. On the coffee table, a neat stack of Dalgona cookies sat next to a single needle. Then he saw the wall. It was covered in notes, diagrams, and photographs, pictures of their friend group, each labeled with numbers. Above it all, scrawled in bold, dripping red letters, was a message that made Mason's stomach drop. The real game begins soon. A shadow moved near the staircase. Jake emerged, dressed in a red jumpsuit and a black mask, just like the guards from Squid Game. He stood there, silent, watching them. "What the hell is this?" Mason demanded. Jake tilted his head, the mask obscuring his expression. "It's a test." "A test for what?" Ryan asked, voice tight. Jake took a step forward. "For survival." Mason swallowed hard. "Jake, this is insane. You need help." Jake sighed, shaking his head. "I knew you wouldn't understand." He gestured toward the table. "Sit down. Let's play." Ryan started backing away. "No, we're not playing your stupid game." Jake pulled something from behind his back. A gun. Mason's blood ran cold. Jake's voice was calm, almost casual. "You will, unless you want to be eliminated." They had no choice. They sat at the table. The only sound in the room was the ticking of a clock as Mason carefully traced the outline of his Dalgona cookie. Across from him, Ryan's hands trembled as he worked. Jake sat back, watching them, his fingers resting lightly on the gun. "You're doing well," he murmured. "But remember, the clock is ticking." Mason swallowed, his throat dry. He was almost finished. Just a little more. Then Ryan let out a sharp breath. A crack ran through his cookie. Mason stopped breathing. Jake leaned forward, tapping his fingers against the table. "That's unfortunate." Ryan's hands curled into fists. "Jake, don't do this." Jake stood slowly. "You know what happens when someone loses." Mason saw the panic in Ryan's eyes. "Jake, listen to me. You don't have to." Jake motioned toward the doorway. "Look inside." Ryan didn't move. Mason did. His feet felt like lead as he stepped toward the dark hallway. The closer he got, the stronger the scent became. A thick, coppery smell that turned his stomach. He hesitated, then peeked inside. He wished he hadn't. There were bodies. 2 of them. One slumped against the far wall, his face frozen in an expression of sheer terror. The other lay sprawled on the floor, his hand still gripping a broken Dalgona cookie. Mason staggered back. "Oh my God!" Ryan took his chance. With Jake distracted, Ryan lunged for the gun. They struggled, knocking over the table. The sound of shattering candy filled the air. Mason didn't think. He grabbed a glass bottle from the counter and smashed it over Jake's head. Jake collapsed, the mask slipping off. For a second, he just lay there. Then he started laughing. Ryan grabbed Mason's arm. "Run!" They didn't look back. The next day, Mason sat on his couch, staring blankly at his phone. Ryan had already gone to the police. They had raided Jake's house. Jake was gone. The bodies were still there, but Jake had vanished, as if he had never existed. Mason rubbed his hands over his face, trying to shake the lingering unease. It wasn't over. He could feel it. Then his phone buzzed. A new message. "Unknown number. The next game is coming." A photo followed. Mason hesitated, then clicked on it. His breath caught in his throat. It was a picture of him and Ryan, taken from outside his window. At night, typing. Each of these stories serves as a chilling reminder that obsessions, unchecked curiosity, and blind trust can lead to horrifying consequences. But what lessons can we take from them? Obsession can be dangerous. Whether it's a fascination with a TV show or an extreme dedication to a game, there's a fine line between passion and madness. When someone starts to lose their grip on reality, it's easy to dismiss it until it's too late. Always pay attention to warning signs. Trust your instincts. When something feels off, listen to that gut feeling. Ryan and Mason ignored the red flags with Jake until they were staring down the barrel of a gun. The contestants in the real-life Squid Game event walked straight into a trap because they trusted an email that seemed too good to be true. If something doesn't add up, don't stick around to find out why. Curiosity can kill. The allure of a high-stakes game, a once-in-a-lifetime challenge, or even just the thrill of mystery can cloud judgment. But curiosity shouldn't come at the cost of your safety. Always question what you're walking into, especially when the stakes seem impossibly high. The dark web is real. The internet hides sinister corners that most people never see. If something appears out of nowhere, promising fortune, adventure, or exclusivity, ask yourself, who is really watching? And at what cost? Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling and regretted it? Do you think an obsession like Jake's could happen in real life? If you were in a real-life survival game, do you think you could make it out? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And remember, sometimes the scariest games aren't the ones we choose to play, but the ones we get trapped in.